You don't fail because you were incapable. You fail because you abandon consistency the moment it stops feeling easy, when motivation fades, when pressure shows up, when life throws chaos your way. This isn't motivation. This is about rewiring your mind until discipline becomes who you are. So that showing up is no longer a choice, it's your identity. No more negotiating, no more starting over. This is how you become someone who does break. The only question left is, are you ready to become unstoppable? In a few moments, I'll teach you how to master unbreakable consistency, so discipline becomes automatic, effortless, and permanent. Consistency is the ultimate superpower. The harsh truth is this: the world does reward effort. It rewards repeated effort. Talent is useless without it. Intelligence means nothing without it. Even luck bows down to it. Consistency is the real superpower. The people you admire, the ones who seem unstoppable, aren't necessarily the smartest or the most gifted. They were the ones who kept showing up day after day. Whether it was exciting, whether it was boring, whether anyone noticed or not, they kept going. Most people don't fail because they were incapable. They fail because they cannot stay consistent long enough for the results to show up. They start strong, motivated, fired up, but the second boredom creeps in, or progress feels slow, or life throws a distraction their way, they fold. They convince themselves that maybe it's not meant to be, that maybe they were not cut out for it. But the truth is simpler, colder, and sharper than they were willing to admit. They quit too soon. Consistency beats talent because talent fades when it's not sharpened. Consistency beats intelligence because intelligence without application is just wasted potential. And consistency beats luck because luck can open a door, but only consistency will keep it open. Look at the people who succeed at the highest levels. It's not the ones who worked the hardest for a week. It's the ones who worked steadily for years, stacking small wins, compounding effort, and refusing to break when progress felt invisible. The problem is most people are addicted to instant gratification. They want the reward before they've earned the right to it. They think that putting in effort for a few days, a few weeks should be enough to change their life, but the game does work like that. The universe does respond to what you do occasionally. It responds to what you do repeatedly. What you do on the days when it is hard, on the days when no one is watching, on the days when you don't feel like it. Imagine someone planting seeds in a field, watering them for 2 days, then walking away disappointed because there's no harvest yet. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But that's how most people approach their goals. They underestimate how long mastery takes. They overestimate how much they can do in a day and underestimate how powerful they become when they do it daily. Consistency is the great equalizer. It makes the average person unstoppable. It allows the underdog to beat the prodigy. It turns nobodies into legends, not because they were better, not because they were luckier, but because they refused to stop. Understand this: your biggest goals will not be conquered by intensity. They will be conquered by relentlessness. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's about doing it long enough. The ones who win in life are simply the ones who never stop moving forward. In a world full of quitters, showing up every single day is the ultimate flex. Consistency is the ultimate power move, and once you master it, nothing can stop you. Stop waiting for motivation. If you are waiting for motivation, you've already lost. Motivation is a liar. It shows up when it wants, disappears when you need it most, and tricks you into thinking that progress is something that only happens when you feel like it. But here, as the brutal truth winners don't rely on motivation. They don't wait for some magical burst of inspiration to show up and push them into action. They move whether they are motivated or not. They execute whether they feel like it or not, because they understand a reality that most people refuse to accept. If your progress depends on your mood, you will never achieve anything that truly matters. Motivation is emotional. It's fleeting. It comes in waves. Some days high, some days non-existent. And the problem with chasing motivation is that when it's gone, so is your action, so is your discipline, so is your commitment. That's why most people start a goal with fire in their chest and end it buried under excuses. They do not lack potential. They lack the ability to act in the absence of motivation. The people who separate themselves, the ones who build bodies, businesses, careers, legacies, they all have one thing in common. They stopped negotiating with themselves. They stopped asking, do I feel like it today? Because the answer doesn't matter. The work gets done either way. They know that greatness isn't fueled by motivation. It is built on discipline. It is built on habit. It is built on the decision that their goals are non-negotiable, no matter what emotion shows up that day. Think about it. No champion in any field ever relied on feeling good every morning to show up. Do you think the marathon runner felt like getting up at 4 a.m. every day? Do you think the entrepreneur building something from nothing always always felt inspired? Do you think the fighter preparing for battle needed to check his mood before training? Absolutely not. They showed up because they made a decision, and that decision was stronger than their feelings. Waiting for motivation is how average people operate. It's how dreamers stay dreamers. It is how excuses get built. I am tired. I don't feel like it. I'll start tomorrow. These are the words of those who stay stuck, spinning in circles, convincing themselves that one day the stars will align and they'll suddenly become consistent. But that day never comes, because consistency does come from waiting. It comes from choosing. You need to understand this if you want to win. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. You don't wait until you feel ready. You start moving, and once you do, momentum builds. And when momentum builds, discipline takes over. And when discipline takes over, motivation becomes irrelevant. This is the secret. This is the truth. No one tells you. The strongest, most successful, most disciplined people, you know they don't feel like it most of the time, but they don't care. They move anyway, and that is why they win. Discipline over feelings, there's a rule that separates the unstoppable from the average. It's simple. It is brutal. It is non-negotiable. Feelings don't matter. Discipline does. The people who rise, who conquer, who dominate, whether in business, fitness, relationships, or life, are not the ones who feel good all the time. They are not the ones who wake up every day excited, motivated, and ready. No, they are the ones who understand that emotions are irrelevant to execution. They don't check in with their feelings before they act. They operate from a place of commitment, not emotion. Most people are slaves to how they feel. If they were tired, they skip. If they were bored, they quit. If they were frustrated, they delay. Their entire life is dictated by the fragile and fleeting whims of emotion. And that is exactly why they stay stuck, cycling through patterns of inconsistency, starting over, quitting halfway, always waiting for the perfect mood that never stays long enough to change anything. But the truth is simple. If you want to win at anything, truly win, you have to stop letting your feelings run the show. Discipline is what bridges the gap between goals and results. What carries you when motivation is nowhere to be found. It is the voice that says, I don't care how you feel. Do it anyway. The most dangerous people in the world, the ones who cannot be broken, are the ones who have mastered the art of showing up whether they were inspired, exhausted, angry, or indifferent. They've realized that the finish line does care about their feelings. Life does care. The world rewards execution, not emotion. Think about it. Discipline is doing what needs to be done long after the mood you made the decision in has disappeared. It's easy to commit when everything feels good. It's easy when you're hyped, energized, and things are flowing, but that does count. Everybody can work when it's easy. The question is, what do you do when it's not? When you are drained, when you are stressed, when the voice in your head screams for comfort, for rest, for escape. That is where winners are made, right there. In that moment when your emotions beg you to quit and you choose discipline instead, you have to understand something. Your feelings are liars. They will deceive you. They will convince you that discomfort is danger, that fatigue is failure, that boredom is a reason to stop, but none of it is true. Those are just signals of growth, signs that you are doing something meaningful, something that stretches you. But only discipline has the power to push through those lies. When you make discipline the standard, not a choice, not a mood-dependent event, but the standard, everything changes. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop listening to the excuses your mind feeds you. You wake up, you execute, you deliver, over and over, no matter how you feel. This is how the unstoppable are made. Their power does come from being emotionless. It comes from refusing to let emotions dictate action. Discipline over feelings every single time. That is the rule, and that is how you win. Build identity-based habits here, as the truth that most people never understand. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. You can set all the goals you want, write them on vision boards, repeat affirmations, daydream about success, but none of that matters if the systems you operate on aren't built to support them. The harsh reality is simple. You don't get what you want. You get what you are. Your identity is the thermostat of your life. You will never outperform it. Most people try to change their life through force. They attack their goals with bursts of motivation, pushing hard for a few weeks, maybe even months. But sooner or later, the force burns out. The motivation fades. Life happens. And they slip back, not because they were weak, not because they were incapable, but because they were trying to operate as someone they aren't yet. Their habits did match their goals because their identity did match the person who achieves those goals. This is where the shift happens, the shift from doing to becoming. You can just do the things successful people do. You have to become the kind of person who does those things automatically. You can just run occasionally. You must be a runner. You can't just start a business for a season. You must be an entrepreneur. You can just work out when you feel inspired. You must be someone who never skips, because when it becomes who you are, consistency isn't hard. It's automatic. Think about the difference between someone who's trying to quit smoking versus someone who says, I am not a smoker. The first is constantly battling temptation. The second, the battle does exist because it's no longer part of their identity. When you build identity-based habits, the fight disappears. The decision isn't made every day. It was made once when you decided who you are. The secret to consistency isn't enforcing yourself to act it as in becoming someone for whom that action is normal, automatic, expected. You start asking a different question. Instead of, what do I need to do to achieve this? You start asking, who do I need to become for this to be inevitable? And once you answer that, the work shifts from chasing goals to reinforcing identity. Every action you take is a vote for the person you are becoming. When you train, even when you don't feel like it, you cast a vote for being disciplined. When you stick to your craft daily, you cast a vote for mastery. When you honor your commitments even in silence, you become someone who finishes what they start. Over time, these votes compound, and the identity becomes real, unshakable, unquestioned. This is why the successful aren't obsessed with motivation. They're obsessed with alignment, their habits, their routines, their standards. They are all expressions of who they are, not just what they want. When you master this shift, when you stop asking how to stay consistent and start asking how to become consistent, everything changes, because it's no longer something you do. It's simply who you are. Make the decision one success does. Come from waking up every day and deciding whether or not you are going to show up. It doesn't come from asking yourself each morning if today is the day you will be disciplined, focused, or committed. The people who win at the highest levels don't wake up negotiating with themselves. They made the decision once, not every day, not every week, once. And from that moment forward, they stopped entertaining the debate. Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they live in a constant state of negotiation. They are always weighing whether they feel like it, whether it is convenient, whether it is comfortable, and that constant indecision is where all the energy gets drained. They exhaust themselves trying to convince their weaker self to act, rather than eliminating the conversation entirely. They don't realize that the decision to commit isn't something that gets revisited. It's something that gets locked in, written in stone, and carried with them until the mission is complete. The truth is, as long as the door to negotiation remains open, weakness will always walk through it. If every day starts with the question, am I going to do this today? You've already lost half the battle, because that question invites excuses. It invites feelings. It invites all the chaos that the mind conjures when it's trying to avoid discomfort. Discipline becomes exhausting when it is framed as a daily debate. But when it is framed as a non-negotiable standard, it becomes automatic. This is the mindset of the relentless. They made the decision once to be the kind of person who shows up no matter what, to be the kind of person who trains, who works, who grinds, regardless of mood, weather, circumstances, or obstacles. The decision was made, and from that point forward, it's no longer a conversation. It is just execution. You don't see lions wake up and question whether they are going to hunt today. They don't check in with themselves about whether they feel like being a lion. They simply are. That is the power of a decision made once. It becomes identity, becomes reality. And when you step into that space where commitment is no longer up for debate, you become a different kind of dangerous. You operate in a world where most people are still stuck negotiating with themselves while you moving, building, creating, conquering. The average person thinks that commitment is something you renew when it is convenient. The extraordinary understand that commitment is something you decide once and prove every day, not with words, not with feelings, but with action. And the moment you remove the daily option to quit, everything changes. You stop burning energy deciding. You stop wasting time explaining to yourself why you don't feel like it. The work becomes the default. The mission becomes the standard. And success, it stops being a question of if, it becomes a matter of when. So make the decision once. Lock it in. Stop negotiating with weakness, because until you do, you will always be one excuse away from failure. But once you do, nothing can break you. The power of non-negotiables there is a line that separates the elite from the average, the disciplined from the inconsistent, the relentless from the comfortable. That line is built from something simple but brutally effective non-negotiables. The strongest, most successful, most disciplined people you will ever meet don't rely on motivation. They don't rely on feelings. They don't wake up wondering whether or not they'll show up today. They have a set of standards, non-negotiable actions that are executed every single day, no matter what, not maybe, not when it's convenient, not when they feel inspired, every day. Non-negotiables are sacred. They are the commitments you make to yourself that are untouchable, unbreakable, and non-negotiable under every circumstance. These are the daily actions that define who you are, not just what you want. Because it's easy to claim you want discipline. It's easy to talk about success. But unless there are actions locked into your day that happen no matter what, whether you are tired, sick, busy, stressed, overwhelmed, or distracted, you are still leaving your life up to chance. The truth is, the average person operates on preference. If they feel like it, they do it. If it's convenient, they show up. But the elite, they operate on principle. Their non-negotiables are not suggestions. They're not goals. They're requirements. Whether the world on fire or the skies are clear, whether the mood is good or bad, whether anyone's watching or not, it does matter. The standard holds. The work gets done. This is the silent contract you sign with yourself when you decide to become relentless. You decide that certain things, training, journaling, building, learning, executing, are no longer optional. They become as necessary as breathing. They are not just tasks on a checklist. They are the price you pay daily to step into the identity of someone who is disciplined, focused, and unstoppable. And the real power of non-negotiables is just in the results they eventually produce. It's in what they do to your mind. Every day that you honor your standard, every day you show up when it's hard, every day you execute without compromise, you prove something to yourself. You reinforce the identity of someone who is reliable, someone who does what they say, someone who can be counted on even by themselves. And over time, that identity compounds into a level of confidence, resilience, and mental toughness that is unbreakable. Most people never experience this power because they live their life making exceptions. They negotiate with weakness. They convince themselves that skipping one day won't matter, that taking it easy just this once is justified. But what they don't realize is that every time they break their own standard, they chip away at their confidence. They weaken the contract with themselves. And that is how inconsistency becomes a habit. The elite don't play that game. Their non-negotiables are law. They understand that discipline isn't something you turn on and off. It's a way of life, a permanent standard, a code. And once you adopt that mindset, once you create non-negotiable daily actions, you separate yourself from the masses permanently. Because while the average drown in excuses, you rise in execution. Master the boring there. An unspoken truth about greatness that almost no one wants to hear. Success is boring. It's not the flashy wins, the viral moments, or the big breakthroughs. Success is repetition. It's doing the same thing over and over and over until the results finally compound. The real difference between the average and the elite is simple. Winners master the boring. They become addicted to the process. They fall in love with the monotony. And because of that, they become unstoppable. Most people never get far enough to win because they were addicted to novelty. They crave excitement. They want everything to feel fresh, stimulating, and entertaining. The second things get repetitive, the second the grind feels mundane, they start looking for something new. They convince themselves they need a different plan, a different strategy, a different goal, when the truth is they were already on the right path. They just could handle the boredom of mastery. This is the harsh reality that nobody wants to accept. Progress is built in the mundane. The training session that feels exactly like the last 100. The late nights of studying, building, refining when no one is clapping, when no one notices. The daily disciplines that become so routine, so repetitive, that to the average person it looks like drudgery, but to the relentless, to those who understand the truth about winning, it is sacred. It is the path. It is the edge. Falling in love with repetition is what creates momentum. It is what separates the talkers from the doers, because when you show up long enough, consistently enough, with enough commitment, something incredible happens. What was once hard becomes easy. What once felt like a grind becomes second nature. Your skills sharpen. Your mind harden. Your results accelerate not because you did something flashy, but because you refuse to break under the weight of repetition. People look at champions and think they're a superhuman. They think they're something mystical about their discipline, their focus, their ability to stay locked in. But there's no secret. They just got so comfortable with boredom that the boredom became irrelevant. They stopped needing things to be exciting. They stopped chasing motivation. They realized the dopamine does come from the activity itself. It comes from the growth that the activity creates over time. The masses will always chase the next thing, the next quick fix, the next hack, the next shortcut. But those who win the real winners, they embrace the boring. They understand that success is some explosion of effort followed by rest. It's a slow, steady, relentless march forward, day in, day out. No breaks, no skipping, no emotional negotiation. When you master the boring, you become dangerous. Because now, the very thing that causes others to quit, the monotony, the grind, the lack of excitement, is what fuels you. You become immune to distraction, immune to frustration, immune to inconsistency, and that is the point where momentum becomes inevitable, where success stops being a question of if and becomes a matter of when. Remove choice, reduce resistance. The greatest weapon in the hands of the disciplined is motivation, it is inspiration, and it is even willpower. The ability to eliminate choice, because choice is where resistance lives. Every time you leave room to decide, you give weakness an opening. You invite hesitation. You allow the voice in your head to start whispering all the reasons why today does to have to be the day. And the more you entertain that conversation, the heavier the resistance becomes. The strongest people, the most consistent, the most relentless, understand that if you want to win, you have to close that door completely. You have to remove choice entirely. Decision fatigue is real. Every day, your brain has a limited amount of energy it can use to make decisions. Waste it on trivial things: what time to wake up, whether to train today, whether to eat clean, whether to work on your craft, and by the time it really matters, your discipline is already eroded. This is why the undisciplined always feel tired, overwhelmed, and inconsistent. They are burning mental energy on things that should have been decided once, not negotiated daily. This is the secret that high performers, athletes, CEOs, warriors, and the relentless all live by routine is freedom. When your life is designed around non-negotiable patterns, resistance vanishes. There's no debate, there's no decision, there's no conversation about whether it's happening. It just happened. Because that who you are. And when the action becomes automatic, consistency becomes inevitable. Imagine waking up and never asking yourself if you were hitting the gym today. It's just what happened. Imagine never wondering if you were going to work on your business, your craft, or your mission. The block of time is already there. The system is already in place. There's no room to back out because it was never a question to begin with. The mind falls in line with what's expected of it. When you train it to stop negotiating, it stops resisting. Weakness lives in the space between intention and action. The longer you hesitate, the louder the excuses get. The way to destroy hesitation forever is simple. You build systems so bulletproof, so automatic, that showing up isn't even a choice. It's just a program you run. And when that program runs long enough, it ceases to feel like discipline. It becomes identity. The people who seem superhuman, the ones who are always consistent, always moving, always progressing, they are not stronger than you. They just eliminated the space where weakness exists. They don't trust themselves to make the right decision every day. They don't rely on fleeting motivation or fragile willpower. They rely on structure, on systems, on habits so deeply wired into their life that not showing up would feel foreign, out of character, impossible. When you remove choice, you remove resistance. And when resistance is gone, progress stops being a fight. It becomes automatic, effortless, relentless. This is how the unstoppable are built, not by being stronger than everyone else, but by making the decision once and never having to make it again. Ruthless simplicity. Most people stay stuck, not because they lack ambition or drive, but because they drown in complexity. They overwhelm themselves with endless tasks, unnecessary steps, and overcomplicated strategies that suffocate progress before it even begins. Success becomes this tangled web of confusion, filled with endless checklists, conflicting advice, and a constant search for the perfect system. And in that chaos, consistency dies. Complexity does just slow you down. It completely destroys your ability to show up day after day. The highest performers in the world understand this at a level the average person never will. They know that the more complicated the process becomes, the less likely they are to stick with it. They don't try to do everything. They don't waste energy designing routines with 1,000 moving parts. Instead, they simplify ruthlessly. They remove everything that isn't critical until what is left is pure, streamlined execution. No fluff, no unnecessary steps, just the bare essentials that drive results. Most failures in discipline aren't because someone did want it badly enough. It happens because the process was so cluttered that showing up became exhausting. The brain resists overwhelm. Every unnecessary choice becomes another weight. Every extra task becomes another reason to hesitate, delay, or quit. Complexity feeds resistance, and when resistance builds, discipline collapses. Simplicity becomes the armor that protects consistency. When the routine is stripped down to the core, action becomes automatic. There's no debate, no negotiation, no wasted mental energy trying to figure out what to do. The work simply happens because the structure is so clean, so simple, so efficient that failure feels unnatural. Look at the most relentless people, the ones who always seem to show up no matter what. Their process is boring to anyone on the outside. It is not flashy. It is not complicated. It's brutally consistent. They focus on the same key habits, the same simple routines day after day, while others get distracted chasing the next hack, the next optimization, the next shortcut. The disciplined stay locked into a process that is so simple it is impossible to break. Overthinking kills progress faster than failure ever could. Most people spend more time planning, tweaking, and second-guessing than they ever do executing. But execution is the only thing that ever mattered. The scoreboard of life does not care how sophisticated your plan is. It only reflects what you actually do. And what you do consistently is what defines you. Simplifying is about doing less work. It about focusing your energy with such intensity and precision that nothing slows you down. Strip the process down to what moves you forward. Discard the distractions disguised as productivity. Cut anything that does directly push you toward the goal. Simplify so aggressively that success stops being a mystery and becomes the inevitable result of a repeatable, reliable system. Once simplicity takes over, discipline becomes second nature. The mind no longer wastes energy deciding whether to act. The routine takes over. The habit runs the show. And when that happens, momentum becomes a force that no longer needs to be pushed. It pulls you forward. Simplicity makes quitting difficult and showing up automatic. This is how the unstoppable are built. Not by doing more, not by overcomplicating, but by mastering ruthless simplicity until consistency is just possible. It is inevitable. The rule of showing up success does not belong to those who are perfect. It does not belong to those who wait until everything feels right, until conditions are ideal, or until motivation magically appears. Success belongs to those who obey one rule: above all else, show up. No matter how ugly, no matter how imperfect, no matter how unprepared, tired, uninspired, or overwhelmed, show up, because progress doesn't come from perfect days. It comes from presence, from being in the arena, even when everything in you whispers to skip it, to take a break, to wait for a better moment. The ones who win are not immune to bad days. They are strangers to fatigue, stress, or moments where the grind feels unbearable. But what separates them is the refusal to let those moments dictate their actions. They understand that the simple act of showing up carries more weight than most people ever realize. Because when you show up, even if you are tired, even if it is messy, you keep the wheels turning. You keep the pattern alive. You keep the momentum intact. And momentum, more than anything, is the real driver of progress. Most people fall into the trap of all or nothing thinking. If they can, do it perfectly. They convince themselves it's not worth doing at all. They wait for the right mood, the right energy, the right time, but that moment rarely shows up, and while they wait, the discipline deteriorates. The habit breaks. The identity of someone who shows up fractures under the weight of their own excuses. What they don't realize is that the single most important habit anyone can ever build is simply this: be the person who shows up no matter what. There will be days when your effort feels weak, when the workout is sloppy, when the work is unfocused, when the results are invisible. But those days count. They count more than the days when everything feels good, because anyone can show up when it's easy. It is the ones who show up when it's hard who end up building something unbreakable. The rule of showing up is what keeps discipline alive. It is the glue that holds momentum together. When you remove the expectation of perfection and replace it with the commitment to presence, everything changes. Suddenly, the pressure lifts. You no longer have to crush every session. You no longer have to feel at your best. You just have to be there. Engage. Do the work to whatever capacity you can. And when you do that enough times, the progress stacks, the growth compounds, the transformation becomes inevitable. There is a quiet kind of power in consistency. It's not loud. It's not glamorous. Most won't even notice it until it's undeniable. But day after day, repetition after repetition, the one who shows up starts separating themselves. While others reset their goals for the 10th time, while others start and stop and start again, the discipline keep moving. They are in sprinting. They are in exploding with effort every time. They were just there, clocking in, staying in the fight, doing the work. And eventually they pull so far ahead that catching up becomes impossible for anyone who did to make that same commitment. Progress isn't a reward for intensity. It's a reward for presence. It's the byproduct of deciding that no matter how small, no matter how imperfect, today still counts. And tomorrow, and the day after that. Each day you show up, you cast another vote for the identity of someone who does T-fold, someone who does T-negotiate with weakness, someone who does T-flinch when it gets hard. The game was never about being perfect. The game has always been about not disappearing. The rule is simple. Show up, always. Even if it's ugly, even if it's messy, even if it's far from your best, because the version of you that simply refuses to quit will always win. Master Micro Commitment's massive success doesn't start with massive action. It doesn't begin with giant leaps or earth-shattering decisions. It begins with something far smaller, something almost invisible to the outside world. Micro commitments. Tiny wins, repeated over and over, are what lead to massive results. This is the secret that the disciplined understand and the inconsistent ignore. It's the understanding that doing something always beats doing nothing, that imperfect effort will always be infinitely more powerful than perfect intentions left undone. Most people sabotage themselves because they believe if they can do it all. They shouldn't do anything at all. They live trapped inside an all-or-nothing mindset. If they can hit the perfect workout, they skip it. If they don't have hours to work on their craft, they do nothing. If they were not fully motivated, fully prepared, fully energized, they convince themselves it is pointless to even start. And that lie becomes the anchor that keeps them stuck year after year. The relentless, the ones who actually move the needle forward, operate on a different code. They understand that forward motion, no matter how small, is always the goal. A 5-minute workout when the day falls apart still counts. 10 minutes of focused work when everything feels overwhelming still counts. 1 page read, 1 step forward, 1 promise kept, it all stacks. Because success is not some singular grand event. It's an accumulation of tiny, seemingly insignificant actions that compound into something extraordinary over time. Micro-commitments are the antidote to overwhelm. They shrink the task until it becomes impossible to fail. They eliminate the mental resistance that builds when the brain perceives a task as too big, too heavy, or too exhausting. The beauty of a micro-commitment is that it does trigger the mind as natural defense mechanism against discomfort. It feels manageable. It feels doable. And once you start, something powerful happens, momentum shows up. What starts as a promise to do 5 minutes often becomes 10. What begins as just opening the laptop often becomes an hour of focus. Action creates energy. Movement fuels motivation. But the key is always the same: you must start, no matter how small. This is how discipline is built. Not by waiting for the stars to align, not by relying on perfect circumstances, but by becoming someone who always honors the smallest possible version of the commitment. You become the type of person who never misses. You don't miss because you've removed the excuse of scale. The workout does have to be brutal, it just has to happen. The writing session does have to produce a masterpiece, it just has to exist. The commitment is about intensity. It is about consistency, about keeping the pattern alive no matter what. The greatest trap is believing that small doesn't matter, that it's not worth it unless it feels significant. But that mindset is the graveyard where most ambitions are buried. What people fail to realize is that consistency isn't about any one day. It is about the collection of days. The proof isn't in how hard you went today. The proof is in the fact that you did miss. You honored the commitment. You showed up. Every time you choose to do something instead of nothing, you reinforce the identity of someone who does quit, someone who follows through, someone who always finds a way, even when life applies pressure. And that identity is everything. Because once you become that person, the one who always keeps the promise, no matter how small, you become unstoppable. Momentum is not something you wait for. It's something you create. And it's created in the tiniest of moments, the ones no one sees, the ones no one claps for, the ones that feel insignificant while you are doing them. But give it time. Let those small wins compound. Let them stack quietly in the background, and soon they transform into something undeniable. When you master micro-commitments, you remove the excuse of not feeling ready. You destroy the myth that you need the perfect day, the perfect window of time, or the perfect mindset. You train yourself to move anyway, to act anyway, to honor the commitment anyway, and that where the gap between the inconsistent and the relentless gets wide, so wide that most will never close it. In the end, it's simple. Keep the promise, no matter how small. Do something. Move forward, because something will always beat nothing. And if you do that long enough, the small becomes massive, the insignificant becomes unstoppable. And the person who was once drowning in hesitation becomes the one everyone else watches in awe, wondering how you made it look so inevitable. Build an environment that forces consistency. Willpower is a lie. It's fragile, fleeting, and unreliable. It crumbles under pressure, fades under stress, and disappears the moment discomfort shows up. The harsh truth most people never want to face is this: you cannot rely on willpower to carry you through anything that matters long term. If you do, you'll lose. You fall back into old habits. You'll skip the gym. You'll skip the work. You'll fold the second life gets inconvenient. But the ones who don't fold, the ones who stay consistent year after year, understand something far more powerful. They understand that discipline is, and just a character trait, it as a byproduct of the environment they've built. They design their lives in such a way that quitting is, and just unlikely. It is nearly impossible. Look closely at anyone who seems to have superhuman discipline. The person who never misses a workout. The person who never skips the work. The one who always building, always growing, always moving forward. It's not that they were born different. It's not that their willpower is stronger than everyone else. It's that they've engineered their surroundings to force their own consistency. The environment does the heavy lifting. The structure they've built takes the pressure off the decision-making process entirely. Most people lose because they underestimate how much their surroundings control their actions. They live with constant friction. Junk food in the house, but a goal of eating clean. Distractions everywhere, but a goal of focusing. Surrounded by negative, lazy people, but trying to build discipline. That is not a lack of motivation. That is sabotage. The battle was lost before it even started. Because your environment will always win. Always. You will eventually adapt to whatever surrounds you, whether it pushes you forward or pulls you backward. The disciplined dawn leave this to chance. They remove the friction that leads to failure. They eliminate the options that feed weakness. They shape everything around them to make the right choice automatic and the wrong choice difficult. The gym is some optional destination. They've built it into their routine, into their physical space, into their calendar, like a non-negotiable meeting. The workspace is free from clutter, free from noise, free from distractions that would tempt them to escape the hard work. The people in their life, air, T anchors, they re-accelerators, people who push them, challenge them, and hold them to a standard where mediocrity isn't allowed. When the environment is designed for execution, motivation becomes irrelevant. The decision-making fatigue disappears. There is no internal debate about whether to show up because the structure makes that decision for you. The mind falls in line with the pattern the environment demands, and once that pattern is established, consistency becomes less about effort and more about inevitability. Think about how the world is engineered to make bad habits easy. Junk food is available on every corner. Entertainment designed to hijack your focus is one tap away. Every distraction, every shortcut, every temptation is engineered to be effortless. And this is why most people drift. This is why most people stay stuck. Because the default environment is built for comfort, for laziness, for weakness. Success then requires an act of rebellion against the default settings of the world. It demands that you become the architect of your own surroundings. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your environment. If your space, your habits, your people, and your systems are not aligned with the person you want to become, Discipline will always feel like an uphill battle. But when everything around you is built to serve that mission, discipline transforms from something you fight for to something that happens to you automatically. The real secret is that consistency does come from trying harder. It comes from designing smarter. Remove the junk food from the house, and clean eating stops being a fight. Remove the notifications, the noise, the chaos, and focus stops feeling like a struggle. Surround yourself with disciplined, focused, ambitious people, and growth stops being something you have to force. It becomes something that is expected, even automatic. The ones who win are not relying on superhuman self-control. They've simply removed the options that would let them fail. They've eliminated the escape routes, closed the back doors, burned the bridges to their weaker selves. The only path left is forward. And when forward is the only option, that is exactly where you go. Success is not about being stronger than everyone else. It is about being smarter with how you design your life. It's about creating an environment where failure is inconvenient and discipline is automatic. When the world around you leaves no room for quitting, showing up stops being a choice, it becomes your way of life. Become emotionally detached from outcomes. Success has never belonged to those who obsess over every outcome. It does reward the person who constantly checks the scoreboard, measuring every single move, expecting perfection in exchange for effort. It belongs to the person who shows up, does the work, and lets go of the need to control what happens next. The truth most people never understand is simple. The more emotionally attached you are to the outcome, the harder consistency becomes. The more you fixate on results, the more volatile your discipline becomes. You rise and fall based on progress you can see. And when progress stalls, as it inevitably does, you crumble. You slow down. You give up. This is where the weak break and the strong get stronger. The disciplined don obsess over results. They obsess over reps. They know that the outcome isn't something you control directly. You don control when the weight gets lighter, when the business takes off, when the breakthrough arrives. You control one thing: the work, the practice, the repetition, the showing up. You own the process, and when you master that, the results eventually take care of themselves. Most people operate with conditional discipline. If the scale moves, they show up. If the followers grow, they stay consistent. If the money increases, the effort continues. But the second those metrics stall, their drive collapses. Their identity was never built on discipline. It was built on the dopamine of visible progress. And dopamine is a fragile fuel. The moment it dries up, so does the effort. The relentless have a different source of power. They are emotionally detached from outcomes because they know the outcome is where the game is played. The game is in the reps, the practice, the process. It is the person who can wake up, do the same work day after day without needing the world to clap for them, without needing proof that it is working yet, because they trust one undeniable truth: it always works if you don't stop. Obsessing over perfection is one of the fastest ways to destroy momentum. It breeds overthinking. It feeds self-doubt. It creates unrealistic expectations that can never be sustained. And eventually, it becomes a trap. You start attaching your self-worth to whether the results came fast enough, big enough, visible enough. When they dawn, which is inevitable at times, you tell yourself a story that you were failing, that you were not good enough, that maybe it not meant for you. But the story was always a lie. The failure one's in the outcome. The failure was in expecting the outcome to validate the process. When you detach emotionally from the results, a different version of you is born. You stop needing progress to feel good about the work. You stop waiting for validation to justify the effort. You become the person who trains simply because who you are. You write, build, create, execute, not because the metrics went up today, but because the work is non-negotiable. You stop being a servant to feedback. You become a master of consistency. This is the shift that makes you unstoppable. You no longer ride the highs and lows of temporary success or temporary failure. You don't spiral when the progress stalls. You don't slack when things feel slow. You stay steady. You stay locked in because the work itself became the reward. The discipline became the identity. And when that happens, the very thing that breaks most people, the waiting, the plateau, the quiet stretch where no one notices, becomes irrelevant to you. Some days the scale does move. Some days the views don't come. Some days the sales are flat. Some weeks it feels like the entire world is ignoring you. Good. Let it. Let the silence build. Let the empty results sharpen your focus. Because when you stop needing the outcome to stay disciplined, you step into a level of mental toughness that almost no one has. You become the person who cannot be shaken, not by slow progress, not by failure, not by anything. The irony is this: when you stop obsessing over the outcome starts showing up faster, because you are no longer draining your energy with overthinking, stress, and frustration. All that energy gets redirected into execution, into action, into relentless forward motion. And consistency without emotional friction compounds faster than anyone ever expects. What used to feel like a grind starts to feel automatic. What used to exhaust, you become second nature. Detach completely. Understand that the outcome will always arrive, but it arrives on its own timeline, not yours. Your timeline is the work, the reps, the discipline, the commitment. The rest will catch up. The body will change. The business will grow. The skills will sharpen, the results will come, but only if you prove yourself worthy of them through repetition that does quit. The moment you let go of needing the outcome to validate you, the chains break. Discipline stops being a struggle. It becomes your default setting. You stop being the person who shows up when it's working and become the person who shows up until it works. And in that transformation, you become the rarest thing in the world, a truly unstoppable human being. Stack discipline with rewards discipline without joy eventually collapses. When the process becomes nothing but suffering, white-knuckling, and forcing yourself through endless grind with zero balance, something inside starts to crack. You might hold it together for weeks, maybe even months, but eventually the mind rebels. It starts asking, why am I doing this? And if that question goes unanswered for too long, discipline starts to fade, motivation dries up, and the consistency you fought so hard to build begins to unravel. The mistake is in the work ethic. It is in the misunderstanding of how the human brain actually works. This is where the smartest, most disciplined people separate themselves. They learn how to pair sacrifice with dopamine. They understand that discipline, when properly balanced with rewards, becomes something sustainable, something powerful, something that wires consistency deep into the brain until it feels less like a struggle and more like an obsession. The truth is simple. Your brain is always keeping score. It tracks pain, it tracks effort, and it tracks reward. If it senses that effort only leads to stress, struggle, and deprivation, it eventually starts sabotaging you. It pushes you toward comfort, toward escape. It whispers louder and louder, telling you that maybe skipping today is so bad. Maybe the goal is worth this much discomfort. This isn't weakness. It is biology. Your brain is designed for survival, not for endless grind without payoff. But here is the shift: the brain also learns through patterns. When you teach it that discipline leads to positive feelings, to satisfying rewards, to micro doses of joy after the effort, it starts craving the process. The work starts feeling less like punishment and more like the gateway to something good. This is the science behind why stacking discipline with rewards is just some fluffy feel-good tactic. It's a weapon, a tool, a strategy that rewires your mind to crave consistency. The key isn't to reward laziness. It is to reward effort. To teach your nervous system that showing up pays off. Hit the workout, then enjoy something you love. Complete the task, then experience something that brings you joy. Finish the grind and then celebrate the fact that you did. Negotiate with your weaker self. The reward does have to be huge. It does have to derail your progress. It just has to be real enough that the brain connects the dots. Discipline equals satisfaction. This is how you create internal momentum. The mind starts associating the grind with pleasure on the back end. You start looking forward to the work because you know what is waiting for you on the other side. It no longer feels like endless sacrifice with nothing in return. It becomes a game, a contract between you and yourself. Show up for the mission, get paid in dopamine, then repeat. Most people burn out because they treat the process like punishment. Their entire relationship with discipline is built on deprivation. No joy, no celebration. Just grind, grind, grind until they inevitably crash. Then they spiral, they binge, they disappear for weeks trying to recover. But it did have to be that way. If they had built in structured, intentional rewards, small moments of satisfaction along the way, they would have crashed. They would have recharged while staying consistent. This is how the most relentless people stay relentless. Not by being robots, not by forcing themselves through endless suffering, but by understanding how to manipulate their own psychology. They engineer their life to make discipline addictive, to make the process something that their mind actually wants to repeat. They don't rely solely on willpower. They pair willpower with systems that feed their brain the rewards it needs to stay locked in for the long haul. The reward does need to be a vice. It does have to be junk food, laziness, or distraction. It can be as simple as a moment of peace, a walk in nature, a favorite meal aligned with your goals, time spent with people you care about, music that lifts your energy, a break that feels earned, not stolen. The reward is less about what it is and more about the psychological signal it sends. I showed up, I did the work, and this is my payoff. When this pattern is wired deeply enough, you stop fighting yourself every day. The resistance fades, the friction decreases. The habit runs on autopilot, fueled by a loop of discipline and dopamine that strengthens itself over time. What used to feel like a battle becomes routine. What used to exhaust you becomes energizing. And the more this loop runs, the more dangerous you become. Because while the average person is burning out, starting and stopping, drowning in the exhaustion of unbalanced effort, you were building quietly, consistently, relentlessly. The people who stay in the game the longest are the ones who figured out this truth early. Discipline does not mean misery. Sacrifice does not mean suffering without end. There is a rhythm to it, a cadence, a flow that balances effort with reward, grind with gratitude, pressure with release. This is how consistency transforms from something you have to fight for into something that becomes automatic, wired so deeply into your operating system that quitting stops even being a conversation. This isn't about going soft. This isn't about making the process easy. It's about making the process sustainable, about turning discipline into something you crave instead of something you dread. Because when discipline gets paired with dopamine, something powerful happens. The grind becomes joy, the struggle becomes purpose, and the work stops being a burden. It becomes the thing you look forward to most. Control your inputs, control your output. Nothing about who you become happens by accident. Every thought you think, every decision you make, every action you take, it all traces back to one thing: your inputs. What goes into your mind directly determines what comes out of it. People love to talk about mindset, about focus, about discipline, yet they completely ignore the root cause behind why their mind feels chaotic, why their focus fractures, why discipline seems impossible to hold on to. They never stop to realize that their output, how they show up, how they execute, how they perform, is a reflection of what they feeding their mind, their body, and their soul on a daily basis. Most people treat their mind like an open trash bin. Anything can go in. Endless negativity from the news, mindless gossip from the people around them, fear-driven narratives, opinions of strangers, the constant drip of distraction, of overstimulation, of noise. And then they wonder why they can't focus. They wonder why they feel anxious. They wonder why the goals they swore they were committed to suddenly feel heavy, overwhelming, and impossible to reach. It is not a mystery. It is not a lack of motivation. Input poisoning. Garbage in, garbage out. Discipline does survive in a polluted mind. Focus does thrive when it's constantly under attack by distraction. Self-belief does grow in a mental environment flooded with negativity and doubt. If what you consume is chaos, your mind will be chaotic. If what you consume is weakness, your output will be weak. The math is brutal but simple. Control the inputs and you control the output. The highest performers, the ones who operate with relentless consistency, understand this at a fundamental level. Their discipline does just come from inner, it comes from ruthless control over what they allow into their mental ecosystem. Their environment is accidental. It is curated, designed, engineered to push them forward, not pull them back. The books they read, the conversations they engage in, all of it feeds the mind that fuels the action. And when the mind is sharp, focused, and fortified with the right inputs, execution becomes inevitable. Look around at your life. Look at the people in your circle. Are they pushing you to rise or pulling you to settle? Are the conversations about growth, discipline, and progress, or are they endless loops of complaining, distractions, and low-level thinking? The brutal truth is this: you will become like the people you spend the most time with. Their habits will bleed into yours. Their energy, their mindset, their values, they will infect you whether you want them to or not. No one is immune to the power of proximity. You either use it to your advantage, or it becomes your greatest liability. The disciplined make different choices. They just audit their physical environment, they audit their information diet. What you read, what you watch, what you listen to, it matters. It matters more than most people will ever admit. Feed your mind with fear, and you will operate from fear. Feed your mind with strength, and you'll start operating from strength. It is not magic. It is math. Input dictates output. This is why the relentless guard their attention like a sacred currency. They don't let just anything in. They are not accessible to every opinion, every distraction, every pointless argument the world throws at them. Their boundaries are high, not because they are arrogant, but because they understand the cost of letting the wrong inputs through the door. The cost is focus. The cost is discipline. The cost is progress, and that cost is too high for anyone serious about winning. Success isn't just about working harder. It is about thinking clearer, seeing sharper, moving with precision, and that clarity is only possible when the mind is clean, when the inputs are aligned with the mission. You can't expect to feel disciplined while drowning in negativity. You can't expect to stay focused while feeding your brain a steady diet of noise. You can't expect to think clearly while surrounding yourself with people who normalize laziness, gossip, and mediocrity. Change the input, and the output transforms automatically. The mind begins to clear, focus sharpens. Discipline stops being a daily battle and starts becoming the default. Because now, instead of fighting against a tidal wave of distraction and negativity, you are fueled by content, conversations, and environments that reinforce your mission. The very air you breathe becomes a source of strength rather than resistance. This is the hidden game most never see. The ones who win aren't just working harder. They've designed a life where everything they consume feeds the best version of themselves. Every book, every conversation, every piece of content, every person in their orbit, all of it either builds them or breaks them. And they choose every single day to consume what builds. Control your inputs ruthlessly, relentlessly, without compromise. Because once the inputs are aligned with discipline, the output becomes unstoppable. And when that happens, success is no longer some distant hope. It's the inevitable result of a mind that has been trained, conditioned, and fed exactly what it needs to win. Burn the backup plan, the ones who rise, the ones who become relentless, unstoppable, and impossible to break. They all have one thing in common. They burned the backup plan. They eliminated the option to quit. They removed the safety nets, destroyed the exit doors, and stripped away every possible excuse their mind could hide behind when things got uncomfortable. Because when failure is no longer an option, when retreat no longer exists, consistency does. It just become a choice. It becomes survival. It becomes mandatory. Most people stay stuck. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack intelligence, but because they always leave themselves an escape route, a plan B, a backup plan, a soft cushion they can fall back on when the process gets hard, when motivation fades, or when results take longer than expected. That quiet little voice whispers, if this does work, you can always go back, you can always quit, you can always take the easier path. And that whisper becomes a virus that infects discipline, kills momentum, and makes quitting feel not just possible, but logical. What they don't realize is that this backup plan, this seemingly harmless safety net, is the very thing holding them back from going all in. It's the mental leash that keeps them from ever truly committing at the level success demands. Because as long as the mind knows there's a way out, it will never give everything. It will always conserve energy. It will always hesitate at the edge of the breakthrough. It will always negotiate with discomfort. Why suffer if there's a way to avoid it? The mind quietly reasons. The disciplined, the relentless, the ones who move differently, they kill that conversation before it ever starts. They burn the bridges back to their old life. They remove the fallback options completely because they know that the only way forward is through. And when through becomes the only option, something primal wakes up inside. The survival instinct kicks in, not for survival in the physical sense, but survival in the pursuit of the goal. Consistency stops being something you try to maintain. It becomes something you fight for, something you depend on, because the alternative is failure. The alternative is going back to the version of yourself you promised you would never be again. This is the truth most ready to face. The presence of a backup plan secretly signals to your brain that you're not fully committed. It tells your subconscious that this is temporary, that this is negotiable. And anything seen as negotiable eventually becomes disposable. When the discomfort hits, and it always does, your brain will default to the path of least resistance. And the backup plan becomes the escape hatch you swore you never use until you do. The moment you remove it, the moment you decide that there is no plan B, no fallback, no safety net, you start operating differently. You stop asking, is this worth it? And you start declaring, this is required. The doubts dawn hit the same way. The bad days dawn tempt you the same way. The mind recalibrates around the fact that quitting isn't tea on the table. And when quitting isn't tea an option, the only thing left is progress. This is how consistency transforms from a battle into a lifestyle. You wake up and the question isn't tea, will I do the work today? The question is irrelevant. Of course you will, because there is nowhere else to go. There is no alternative identity to slide back into. The only version of you that exists now is the one who shows up, the one who executes, the one who honors the mission, because the mission isn't just a goal anymore, it is survival. Burning the backup plan doesn't mean being reckless. It doesn't mean making foolish decisions. It means committing so deeply to the outcome that every cell in your body understands there is no escape. It means removing the option to drift back into comfort, into laziness, into mediocrity. It means understanding that transformation requires not just effort, but total commitment, the kind that does flinch when tested. The uncomfortable truth is that the presence of an easy way out is the most seductive form of failure. It wears the mask of reason, of practicality, of being smart, but what it really is a quiet permission slip for weakness to thrive. The seed of doubt planted deep in the soil of your ambition. And the longer it stays, the harder it becomes to break free. But the second you torch that bridge, the second you make the decision that there is no other way, you become dangerous. You become someone who no longer debates with discomfort, who no longer negotiates with fear. You become someone whose actions are no longer powered by temporary motivation, but by necessity, by fire, by the refusal to let any version of failure become acceptable. When the mind accepts that there is no escape, it stops searching for one. It starts channeling that energy into solutions, into progress, into execution. The focus sharpens, the discipline hardens, the resilience compounds, the distractions lose their grip, and the work, the endless, often invisible work, becomes the only reality that matters. This is the moment everything shifts. When the backup plan is gone, the excuses die with it. And what rises in its place is a version of you that is relentless. Consistency stops being some fragile concept you hope to maintain. It becomes oxygen, non-negotiable, expected. And that is when the world starts to move out of your way, because nothing and no one can stop a person who has removed the option to quit. Adopt no matter what mentality. The difference between those who succeed and those who never escape mediocrity has nothing to do with talent, luck, or intelligence. It has everything to do with one unshakable mindset, the no matter what mentality. The people who rise, the ones who outlast everyone else, are not the ones who wait for perfect conditions. They are not the ones who check the weather forecast of life before deciding if they'll show up. They show up anyway. Rain, pain, fatigue, stress, it does not matter. Circumstances dawn to dictate their behavior. Their emotions dawn to decide whether they follow through. Their commitment has no loopholes, no backdoors, no exception. The decision to execute has already been made. It's final, non-negotiable. And that is exactly why they win. The average person does operate like this. The average person lives at the mercy of their environment. If they were tired, they take the day off. If they were stressed, they push things until tomorrow. If it is raining, if they dawn feel 100%, if life throws a curveball, the mission is postponed. Excuses become easy because they've built a life where the excuse feels justified. And every time they allow the excuse to win, they reinforce weakness. They make inconsistency part of their identity. Over time, this becomes the norm of life that only moves forward when conditions are perfect, which, let's be honest, is almost never. The ones who live differently don't play by those rules. They've trained their minds to execute regardless of circumstance, not because it is easy, not because they enjoy discomfort, but because they understand the brutal reality life does not care how you feel. The world does not pause because you are tired. The opportunities you miss while waiting for a better day do not come back around. The clock keeps moving. The competition keeps moving. The window of opportunity keeps shrinking, and the only thing that stands between you and the life you want is whether or not you can show up no matter what. Adopting this mentality is not about becoming emotionless or robotic. It's about understanding that your feelings are irrelevant when it comes to your commitments. Your emotions are real, but they are not valid reasons to stop. Fatigue is real. Stress is real. Pain is real, but none of them are bigger than the mission. None of them hold more weight than the promise you made to yourself. Training your brain to operate at this level starts with destroying the idea that convenience matters. Convenience is a trap. It is the drug that keeps people locked in cycles of inconsistency. The second you start believing that the work only happens when it feels good is the second you give your power away. The no matter what mentality takes that power back. It reprograms your operating system to eliminate the debate. It removes the conversation about whether or not you'll show up today. The answer is always the same: you will. Life will test this mindset relentlessly. You will wake up exhausted some days. Your body will hurt. Your mind will be clouded with stress. People will disappoint you. Obstacles will show up that you didn't see coming. And this is exactly why this mindset matters more than anything else. When everything feels like it's falling apart, when every excuse feels justified, when most people would fold that's the exact moment where this mentality proves its power. You move anyway. You execute anyway. You don't wait for permission from your emotions. You give yourself permission to win. And every time you do this, every time you show up when it's hard, you feed a different part of yourself. You reinforce the identity of someone who cannot be broken, someone who cannot be swayed by fatigue, by inconvenience, by pressure. You start to look at obstacles differently. Instead of asking, how do I get around this? You start declaring, it doesn't matter. I go anyway. The barrier stops being the reason you pause. It becomes the reason you sharpen your edge. The longer you live this way, the more automatic it becomes. The resistance fades. The inner debates get quieter. The friction that once drained your energy disappears because the answer is already written into your DNA. I show up. I move forward. No matter what. This isn't about pretending the hard days don't exist. It is about proving to yourself that the hard days don't get to decide who you are. And that is the ultimate power. When most of the world is waiting to feel better, waiting for life to ease up, waiting for circumstances to align, you are moving quietly, relentlessly, unstoppably. You are stacking days, stacking wins, building a gap between you and everyone who still believes that discomfort is a valid reason to stop. And as that gap widens, the results start to speak. People will wonder how you stay so consistent, how nothing seems to derail you. They will ask what your secret is, but by then, it's not a secret. It is simply who you are. The no matter what mentality is, just some motivational slogan. The dividing line between those who talk about discipline and those who live it, between those who wish and those who execute, between those who dabble and those who dominate. Once this mindset is installed, the game changes forever because nothing can stop the person who has decided that circumstances are irrelevant. That pain is irrelevant. That stress, fatigue, doubt, and inconvenience are irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the mission, and the mission gets executed no matter what. Bounce back fast. Resilience on repeat. No matter how disciplined you are, no matter how dialed in your habits become, life will eventually punch you in the mouth. Circumstances will hit. Fatigue will win for a day. Sickness, emergencies, unexpected chaos, they are all part of the process. You will slip. You will miss a day. And when that happens, the average mind starts spiraling. It feeds on guilt. It starts whispering, you are slipping. You are failing. You've broken the streak. Maybe you are not built for this after all. That voice gets louder. It starts turning a single missed day into an excuse to miss two. And that where the real danger begins. Missing one day doesn't matter. It never has. One missed rep, one skipped workout, one day of falling short is irrelevant in the grand scheme of the mission. But missed twice. Now you've started writing a different story. Now you're sending your mind a signal that breaking the pattern is acceptable. And patterns, whether built for greatness or for failure, are what shape your life. Consistency works both ways. The same mechanism that builds unstoppable discipline can also construct a downward spiral if you let it. The most dangerous moment isn't the day you fall, it is the day after. That is the fork in the road. That is where the disciplined separate themselves from the quitters. The disciplined understand that resilience is not about never falling. It's about how violently, how aggressively, how immediately you get back on your feet. They don't sit in self-pity. They don't negotiate with guilt. They don't give failure more power than it deserves. They bounce back instantly. No story, no drama, no drawn-out self-judgment, just correction, just course adjustment, just getting back to the work. The ones who stay stuck are the ones who believe that setbacks mean starting over. They convince themselves that missing one day erases the previous weeks, months, or years of work. But that is a lie. Discipline isn't. Shattered by a single miss. It's shattered by the story you tell yourself about that miss. If the story becomes, I've messed up, I am slipping, I've failed, then you start to act in accordance with that belief. What could have been a single missed step becomes a downward slide. The relentless know that the faster they bounce back, the weaker failure becomes. They've trained themselves to see a missed day for what it really is, a blip, an outlier, an event that carries exactly as much weight as they decide to give it. If the mind accepts that one miss is catastrophic, discipline starts to die. But if the mind accepts that one miss means nothing unless you let it repeat, then the integrity of the habit holds. This is resilience on repeat. It's the ability to treat every slip as nothing more than static on the signal. You don't panic because the signal is still there. The direction is still clear. The goal is still the same. The discipline don't catastrophize. They don't throw away entire weeks because of a single off day. They recognize that falling is part of the process. They get back to the program immediately because waiting, thinking, overanalyzing only gives resistance more power. This is a psychological skill. It is a muscle you build. The faster you interrupt the spiral, the less damage it does. You teach your brain that the standard hasn't changed. You didn't fall back to zero. You are not starting over. You are simply continuing right where you left off. The day before might have been off track, but today isn't T. Today, the work happens. Today, the pattern holds. Today, the comeback begins not next week, not after wallowing in guilt today. Momentum, both forward and backward, is always waiting to be built. The people who master discipline are in T superhuman. They just never let the backward momentum gain traction. They refuse to let one bad day turn into two, into three, into a week of regret. They understand that the only day that matters is the one in front of them, not yesterday's failure, not tomorrow's pressure. Just today, the next step, the next rep, the next execution. This mindset becomes a shield. It keeps failure small. It keeps setbacks microscopic. It prevents the emotional drama that consumes most people when they stumble. There is no emotional unraveling, no dramatic conversations with themselves about whether they are still worthy of the goal. There's only the next step, only the decision to keep moving forward. And that decision, repeated quickly and often, is how resilience becomes permanent. The mistake most people make is in falling. It, in giving the fall more meaning than it deserves. They let a bad moment define an entire week. They let a rough day become a reason to give up on the entire mission. But discipline does to work like that. You're not defined by the moment you fell. You are defined by the speed and intensity with which you get back up. Bouncing back fast isn't just about discipline. It is about identity. It is about reinforcing the fact that you are someone who gets back up. Someone who doesn't break just because the day did go perfectly. Someone who honors the mission regardless of how messy the path looks. Every time you recover quickly, you send a signal to yourself you are resilient. You are unshakable. You are in control. Resilience is not a single act. It is a habit. It is a lifestyle. What happens when bouncing back stops being a reaction and starts being an automatic response? This is how the unstoppable stay unstoppable. Not because they never fall, but because falling holds no power over them. The comeback happens fast, it happens decisively, and it happens without question. One missed day means nothing. Missing twice is how failure begins. Keep that line sacred. Keep that standard unbreakable. Let it be the line that failure never crosses. Because when you master the bounce back, when resilience becomes your default, you become the rarest thing in the world. You become someone that failure cannot hold. The silent power of patience in a world addicted to speed, where everyone wants instant results, overnight success, and rapid transformation, patience has become a forgotten skill. But the truth is simple, brutal, and inescapable. Consistency is a long game. And those who master patience hold a kind of silent power that very few will ever understand. In a culture obsessed with shortcuts, the person who is willing to play the long game becomes untouchable. Most people are in a constant race against their own expectation. They start something, whether it is fitness, business, skill building, or self-mastery, and expect results to show up on their doorstep within days, weeks, or maybe a few months if they were feeling generous. The second progress feels slow, the second the dopamine of quick wins fades, they start to spiral. Doubt creeps in. Impatience takes the wheel. The mind starts whispering, maybe this isn't working. Maybe you are not cut out for this. Maybe it is time to try something else. And this is how the average person lives, bouncing from plan to plan, chasing the high of a fast start, but never staying long enough to witness the compounding power of consistency. The disciplined, the relentless, the unstoppable, they operate on a completely different frequency. They understand that real progress is invisible for a long time. You show up day after day, stacking reps, building discipline, refining skills, and for a while it feels like nothing is happening. No applause, no fireworks, just silence, just grind. And most people successful, Don, survive that silence. Most people mistake it for failure when in reality it's just the calm before the breakthrough. The waiting room where the universe separates the committed from the curious. Patience isn't passive. It's not sitting around hoping things work out. It's an aggressive kind of calm, a weaponized form of discipline. It is knowing that while the results haven't arrived yet, they are inevitable as long as you refuse to stop, as long as the reps continue, as long as the mission remains the standard. Patience means understanding that time is an ally, not an enemy, and that the seeds you plant today are not supposed to bear fruit tomorrow. They grow on their own schedule, not yours. The world will tempt you to quit. It will tempt you to speed things up, to cut corners, to abandon the process for the illusion of faster gratification. That's the noise designed to pull you off the path. The ones who stay locked in are the ones who understand that mastery does operate on a timeline of weeks or months. It operates on years, on decades, on a lifetime. This is why patience becomes a superpower. The ability to endure the discomfort of delayed gratification without letting it fracture your discipline. The ability to show up, knowing that today effort might not show any visible reward, but knowing with absolute certainty that it still counts, that it still compounds, that it still matters. The irony is that those who try to move the fastest, who chase speed over substance, end up moving the slowest. They restart over and over. They abandon one process for the next shiny object, never realizing that every time they start over, they reset the clock. They trade long-term progress for short-term comfort, and in doing so, they guarantee that they will never taste what it feels like to win at the highest levels. Meanwhile, the patient ones, the ones who stay steady, are quietly becoming dangerous. While the world panics, they execute. While the average person spirals in frustration over progress they can see yet, the disciplined keep stacking bricks, quietly, relentlessly, without complaint, without needing external validation. And then, suddenly years later to the world, but exactly on schedule to them, the breakthrough happens. The results explode. The mastery becomes undeniable. And people look at them with confusion, with envy, whispering things like, "Must be nice," completely blind to the fact that what looks like sudden success is actually the compound interest of years of patience meeting years of discipline. Patience isn't weakness. Power. It is an act of rebellion against a world drunk on immediacy. It is a refusal to let the pressure of false timelines disrupt the mission. The patient are dangerous because they cannot be manipulated by the clock. They do not care how long it takes. They only care that it gets done. And because of that, they don't burn out. They don't quit. They don't get baited into the trap of shortcuts. There's a different kind of confidence that grows when you truly embrace patience. It is not the loud, showy confidence of someone chasing quick wins. It is a quiet certainty, a deep-rooted, unshakable understanding that the work will pay off because the work always pays off. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but eventually, inevitably, always, the people who master patience become immune to failure. Because to them, failure isn't real. Failure only exists when the clock runs out. But when the clock does matter, when the only standard is showing up, failure simply cannot exist. There is only the process, only the grind, only the discipline. And the quiet knowing that success will eventually fold to the person who refuses to stop. This is the silent power of patience. It is not loud. It is not flashy. But it's more powerful than anything else. Because while the rest of the world burns themselves out chasing speed, the discipline stands steady, stacking their wins. Letting time do what it always does for the committed, it rewards them in ways the impatient will never understand. Let your results speak for you. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most dangerous. The one constantly explaining, justifying, announcing their intentions, advertising their discipline, they were usually masking insecurity. Real power does need to scream. Real discipline does need an audience. The person who is truly dangerous is the one who silent, quiet, locked in, the one who is so consumed by the process, so immersed in the work, that they have no energy left for proving anything to anyone. Their results do the talking. Their consistency becomes their voice. And that voice is far louder than anything words could ever say. In a world obsessed with validation, with broadcasting every move, every intention, every minor win, choosing silence becomes an act of power. The average person craves recognition at every step. They post their workouts, their goals, their progress, progress, needing others to see, to clap, to approve. And in doing so, they drain the very energy they should be pouring into the mission. They feed their ego with dopamine instead of feeding their discipline with action. The person who truly wins, the one who separates themselves, operates differently. They understand that the applause means nothing if the work isn't real. That talking about the mission is the same as executing it. That telling people how hard you are working does replace actually working. So they stop talking, they stop explaining, they stop announcing, they let the process consume them until the only thing left to show is undeniable proof. There is a brutal truth most never face. When you talk too much about what you are going to do, the mind starts confusing the announcement with the accomplishment. You trick yourself into feeling like progress has been made simply because you said something about it, but nothing happened, nothing changed. Only the illusion of movement was created. And while you are busy talking, someone else is in the shadows, quietly putting in reps, quietly building, quietly becoming. And by the time the world notices them, it's already too late to catch up. The most dangerous person in the room is the one you never saw coming. The one who didn't. He advertised their grind. The one who didn't. Waste time explaining why they were disciplined, why they were different. While others were busy proving they were improving. While others were performing for attention, they were performing for themselves, for the standard they set, for the mission they committed to long before anyone cared. Silence is leverage. It creates mystery. It forces people to guess, to wonder, to speculate. While they waste time figuring you out, you are moving, you are advancing, you are sharpening. And when the results show, when the body transforms, when the business scales, when the skills become undeniable, there's nothing left for anyone to say. The results end every argument. They silence every critic. They answer every question that words could never answer. The truth is, most people, Don, really want you to win. They want you to stay exactly where you are. They want you to be predictable, comfortable, ordinary. So when you announce your plans, what you are really doing is inviting doubt, resistance, and subtle sabotage from others, whether it is intentional or unconscious. Their opinions seep in. Their doubt becomes noise. Their skepticism becomes a weight you now have to carry while trying to stay disciplined. But the one who says nothing, who keeps their head down and stays locked in, avoids all of that. They move free of judgment, free of expectation, free of anyone else's limitation. Letting your results speak for you is not about being antisocial. It's not about hiding. It is about understanding where your energy belongs. Words are energy, explanations are energy, justifications are energy, and that energy should be fueling your work, not feeding your ego. When you remove the need to be seen, to be recognized, you free yourself to focus entirely on the craft, the discipline, the process. There's a calm that grows when you no longer need to explain yourself. When you realize that the scoreboard does care about what you said, only about what you did, you move with a different level of confidence, not the loud, performative confidence of someone trying to convince the world they were serious, but the quiet, grounded confidence of someone who knows they are. When the work speaks, it is undeniable. When the results show up, there's no debate. No one questions the person who transformed their body through years of relentless discipline. No one doubts the entrepreneur who built something massive from nothing. No one challenges the craftsman whose skills are so sharp they speak for themselves. The silence becomes louder than any announcement ever could be. Most will never know what it feels like to live this way because most are addicted to being seen. They are hooked on external validation. But the person who breaks free from that addiction becomes lethal because now the work becomes pure, uncontaminated by the need for recognition. The discipline becomes cleaner, the focus sharper. The mission becomes about the mission and nothing else. So let them talk, let them doubt, let them ask where you've gone, why you've gone quiet, why you're not posting about the grind, why you are not explaining yourself anymore. Smile, keep moving, let the silence confuse them. Let the results destroy their assumptions, because when you let your results speak, the conversation is over. You either stay ready or you have to get ready. Life does warn you before it demands more from you. It does send you an invitation before the opportunity shows up. It does ask if you were prepared before it tests your resilience, your discipline, your capacity. And this is the harsh, unavoidable truth. You either stay ready or you scramble to get ready. The person who lives consistent does fear the moment because the moment never catches them off guard. They don't have to shift gears, don't have to scramble, don't have to panic to pull themselves together. They are always ready, not because they are special, not because they were lucky, but because they chose this lifestyle long before the moment arrived. This isn't T about motivation. This isn't T about hype. This is about identity. Discipline isn't T something you switch on when life gets serious. It something you embody, something you carry, something so deeply wired into who you are that when pressure hits, you don't T flinch. You don't collapse. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall back to the level of your training. And if the training was real, if the work was consistent, if the standard was always non-negotiable, then the moment never owns you. You own the moment. The person who does T live this way suffers a different fate. They are always behind, always reactive, always scrambling to get their life together after they let themselves slide for too long. The opportunity shows up and they are not ready. The test arrives and they were caught unprepared. They try to accelerate at the last second, but it is too late. You don't build capacity in the storm. You build it when the skies are clear. You build it on the boring days, the quiet days, the days when nobody's watching and the temptation to slack off feels justified. You build it when the stakes seem low so that when the stakes rise, you are already moving at the speed the moment demands. This is the final truth most will never accept. Discipline isn't something you do. It's someone you become. It's not a phase. It's not a project. It's not a season. It's a permanent shift in identity. The question stops being, how do I stay motivated? And becomes, how does someone like me show up? Because when the identity shifts, the behavior follows automatically. The debate ends. The inconsistency dies. You are either the person who lives ready or you are the person who has to get ready, and getting ready always costs more. So this isn't T motivation. This isn't T hype. This is T a speech designed to fire you up for a few hours before you slide back into old patterns. This is a mirror. This is the message. You are building something permanent, or you are building nothing at all. The world will always ask if you are ready. Make sure the answer is always yes. Stay ready because that is who you are now. This is no longer about motivation. This is no longer about waiting for the perfect moment. You have now learned the blueprint, the mindset, the systems, the identity to become the kind of person who shows up no matter what. Consistency is, D, something you try. It, who you are now. The excuses are dead. The backup plans are burned. From this moment forward, the mission is simple. Show up, execute, and let your results speak. Relentless, unstoppable, unbreakable. This is your new standard.